Have you heard the saying, what got you here won't get you there? When it comes to the life cycles of a growing nonprofit, nothing could be more true. I'm going to talk about the 3 phases of the evolution of organizational design and structure that you should think about and work on as you try to get to this next level of $1 million in your organization. I go much deeper into this in an upcoming private training on January 25th. It's from 12:30 to 2:30, and I talk about the 4-part framework that you need to really do a deep dive into to take your organization to the next level. One piece of which is this idea of organizational design and structure that I'm going to go over today. If you would like an invitation to the training, you can apply at Richie-Babbage.com/nonprofit accelerator. So the critical framework for you to understand as you think about what's going to get you to that next level of $1 million is organized into 3 core parts: organic design, intentional design, and systematized design. Now, none of this is rocket science. My intention here is to take all of the information and insights and instincts that you have as a leader, that you've learned along the way, etc., and organize it so that you can take inspired and intentional action, specifically in the direction of hitting that $1 million and surpassing the $1 million mark. So I'm going to walk through each of these briefly. When we talk about organic design and structure, what we really mean is an organization that's characterized by low complexity, low centralization of decision-making and work, and low formalization. There are not many departments, if any. There are few levels of management, wide spans of control. So each person oversees work in lots of different areas, or at least has their hands on work in lots of different areas. Most decision making is intuitive, instinctive, and decentralized, and there's a very short chain of command. Decisions are often rooted in a deep connection to and understanding of external context and stakeholders. And so usually this is a structure that exists in early stage organizations and organizations that are deeply rooted in their community. Leadership is flat, and organizations at this point are typically, therefore, able to be really nimble and responsive. And so there tends to be a responsiveness in their programming, how they structure their work, etc. The next phase is what we call intentional design or intentional structure. And this phase is characterized by deliberate assessment and making intentional affirmative choices about how you want to design certain parts of your organization. So the first part of this is deliberate assessment about what's working and what's not, looking at decisions that are being made, how work is organized, how your staff is structured, how you lead, and making a conscious movement away from what isn't working, as well as a conscious investment or doubling down on things that are working. And so there's this shift to intentionality. And finally, the third phase of organizational evolution, organization design and structure evolution, is systematized structure. And this is where you take what's working and you build an infrastructure to support it. Standard procedures for common processes. You start to name norms. You develop protocols to ensure consistency and continued alignment with what's working. And that's everything from the values that you want to make sure that you have at the core of your organization, to the kind of culture you want to build, to how checks are signed. You want to ensure consistency and continued alignment. And so you start to build systems that automate these processes. And what that does is it reduces operational friction. It means that as you automate and systematize those things that work, you as a leader and your staff has to spend a lot less time bringing people on board, making sure everybody knows what's supposed to happen, and carrying out the processes. So how do you actually move through these phases? How do you operationalize this? The first important shift that you're going to undergo, and this may sound really familiar to some of you, is a movement from organic to intentional design. Here you want to do 3 things. First, you want to begin to establish and capture norms, Bring everyone on your team into the definition and story of your mission and organization, and give them a voice in shaping the vision and the culture. It really shouldn't just be the founder, the executive director, or the board. That's a lot of weight. And so you want to start to look around for ways that you can just sort of recognize and lift up norms that are beyond you, and name them, write them down. How do you hire? How do you compensate? How do processes work? How do workflow lines of work get set up and lines of accountability? What do you care about? Do they work the way you want them to? So start to name these, capture them, write them down. The second thing you want to do is analyze them. And this is the beginning of the shift to intentionality. You do not have to do what you've always done. The question here is, how should things work? Now that you've identified and captured norms, are they the norms that you want to bring forward? Are they the norms that are going to take you to this next level? What is working and what isn't? And get really laser sharp and focused on what is working, on identifying what is working versus what isn't. And third, identify those things that you want to track as an organization and the norms in certain buckets. And so there are a few that you want to think about. You want to think especially about norms and processes and protocols within the areas of financial health, how you map out workflows so that they aren't just about job descriptions and the org chart, how you establish norms around compensation, hiring, and professional development, fundraising, working with your board, and external networking and strategic partnerships. Those are the areas that, as you establish, capture, and analyze norms, you want to pay particular attention to. So moving from intentional to systematized involves 3 steps. Once you have identified your norms and have started to be intentional about investing in the ones that you want to carry forward, now it's time to develop an infrastructure to support that movement in the direction of the way you want things to go, so that it isn't just you or your leadership team carrying all of the processes and the culture and the vision forward. So the first thing you're going to want to do, and this may for many of you be a few months or even a year out, and that's fine. I just want to flag or signal sort of what this evolution looks like over time. It also doesn't all happen at once. You don't go from sort of organic to intentional to systematized. More often, different parts of your organization are going to feel more organic, feel more nimble, feel flatter and less differentiated. And other parts of your organization are going to feel more intentional, even more systematized, and that's fine. The evolution of design and structure happens at different levels of the organization, but it can be helpful to understand what you're seeing in those different levels and at those different levels. So moving from intentional to systematized, the first thing you're going to want to think about is developing standard operating procedures and training your team on those SOPs. This allows you to build a culture of strategic delegation for you and your team so that you can get to the point where anyone can step in and run basic processes. That's what I mean when I talk about the reduction in operational friction. The second piece of this is automating whatever can be automated. This is fundraising systems, board communication, marketing. There are lots of little places that automation can be added, and technology can really help with that. And so really leaning into further reduction of operational friction by, removing things from people's plates that can be automated. And finally, you want to keep testing and refining. Right? Once you set up a system, it will probably change. And so continuing to go back and gut check with your team, with your board, now that we have these systems, now that we've automated, now that we've systematized what's working and what's not, and what needs to be refined. And that will be an ongoing process. So in summary, the key to becoming the kind of organization that is designed and structured in a way that can surpass $1 million easily and without your burnout is to move from organic to intentional to systematized design and structure. And I hope this mini training has given you a broad overview sense of what that looks like in practice. Again, I am hosting a live private training on January 25th where I walk through this in more detail and talk way more about what it means and what it takes to get to and pass $1 million. You can apply for an invitation at richie-babbage.com/nonprofit accelerator. Thanks.